right, gang. So I am super excited today to be chatting with you about the mental side of running. I think it's an area that we easily overlook. We know it's important, but then we spend most of our time looking at a training plan, and training plans don't have mental tips. So I'm really excited to have Tina here. A lot of you guys probably already know her from her podcast, but she's actually been working on some cool stuff around the mental side of training. And so I wanted to chat with her more about that. So hi, Tina.
Hi, thank you so much for having me today.
Absolutely. So initially, do you want to kind of just give folks, if for some bizarre reason they don't listen to your podcast, an overview of who you are and what you're working on?
Yeah, thank you. Well, firstly, I want to thank you I know you have mentioned it on your podcast to listen to webpage. I do have some people who tell me they come from you. So thank you for getting the word out. And some of the people watching today may have been because you recommended me. So thank you. But yes, so I have a running podcast called Running for Real. It's done very well. I'm almost at 3 million downloads. The podcast is about 2.5 years old. So I'm very happy with that. I'm proud of that. That is a very big number, which is kind of a bit scary. But I've also worked hard and obviously thankful for the guests who have also shared it and other people who listen to the podcast who have also shared it to help it grow like that. Before this, I was an elite runner. I am from Britain, as people can tell, but I've lived in the US for, I think, about 14 years now. So it's been a long time. I ran here in university, ended up meeting my husband, stayed on, went on to run, at the elite level. And did very well. But I would say I'm best known for stopping running around when I suddenly, I hadn't had a period in 9 years. I'd kept that quiet, but kind of reached a snapping point where I had fallen out of love with running. I was fed up of my body not working. And I spoke out about it and it went viral. And I think that's how most people actually ended up coming to know me. And then since then, I've kind of seen myself as the bridge between elite running and everyone else, because I know the elite running side. I know that dedication it requires. But I also very much kind of fall into the recreational runner side of things right now because I am pregnant with my second child and just don't really have the ambitions right now to even try and train hard. So that's kind of where I'm at.
That's amazing. And actually, I love that last statement. So I think that people feel like if they aren't training for a race, like maybe what's the point? And especially if they have always kind of had a goal race. So what has kind of helped you mentally shift into that, like, I'm running for me?
Well, I think it initially started at that like snapping point. I had been I'd achieved my biggest goal of running for Great Britain. I'd done it the year before. I'd run a big PR in the marathon. And then I just found myself really disenchanted. And then when I did stop running, I took 3 months totally off all exercise, did end up getting pregnant during that time, but I wasn't sure I would ever run again. Like, honestly, I hated it. I hated it when I stopped. And so I promised myself that when and if I started again, I would have to do it for joy. It couldn't be about the finish line. I was at the point where I was in January thinking about a July finish line, not even get to the race and enjoy the race, but the finish line of a marathon in July and in January. And I thought, I can't do that. This is not what it's all about. So yeah, it just kind of part of it was just the promise to myself I made. But I'm not going to lie, since then I did have that year in between my children where my daughter was grown enough to where I could have in theory trained. But I didn't want to because, again, it was about the joy of it. And for me, it's very difficult not to compare if I start getting in that mindset. So I think that, as you've talked about a lot, there's something really magical about finding that place where you're not doing it for the results. It really is a special place. And I know you and I have talked about more and more people are realizing that like, you don't have to be running for a PR. You don't have to be like head down and like digging deep and like eyes burning a hole in the road ahead of you to actually, get the most out of yourself. Sometimes the best results actually and our most enjoyable races come from those days that we are just kind of like, you know what? I'm just appreciative to be out here right now. So yeah.
That's so true. So one of the things you started was this mental training program. And what kind of helped you decide you wanted to put that together?
Yeah, I've always been fascinated by psychology. In fact, had my university had psychology as an option for a degree, I probably would have done that. I love it, and I've always loved it. But I noticed that, yeah, there's so many training plans out there for, get race ready in 3 months, or here's a training plan, here's a coach, here's everything you need to do to keep yourself healthy, here's all these things. But then what I was noticing from my community, from my audience, was that they were saying, how do I stop myself from mentally giving up? How do I stop myself from getting to that point at mile 22 of a marathon, or mile 2 of a 5K, like whatever it may be, and not saying, this is too hard. I can't do this. I'm slow. I'm not good enough. Like, everyone's passing me. And we all know that once you get to that point, it spirals fast. Like, it quickly goes out of control, where you feel like sometimes tempted to even just step off the side of the race, or to just walk it in, because what's the point? And I thought there has to be a way. Like, I'd worked with sports psychologists, and I was really thankful to have had that during my elite career. And I knew how much of a difference that made. But I also know that, as you have said, with your audience, and kind of the not taking the time to do the little things, the rehab, the prehab, the warm-ups, because they don't feel they're good enough. People certainly don't feel like they're good enough to go see a sports psychologist. That is really, the mindset is changing around most things, but a sports psychologist, that is still very much viewed as, you do that if you're at the top of your game. Otherwise, that's not for you. And I thought there has to be something I can do to help those people. And so I collected up everything I'd learned over the years, all the research. I broke it down into a 12-week course that people could take, take at their own leisure, but it's kind of set up to do the 12 weeks before your race. It's getting you ready, starting with big things like finding joy in your running, confidence in your running, believing in yourself as a person, because that's one of the magic things about mental training, is people don't realize you can't fix your running and be confident as a runner if you think you're a horrible person and you don't deserve any happiness in your life. So get starting at those big things, working down to the really little things, like how to use distraction, like literally getting yourself to the next light post. So it works in so that it gets you ready for race week, kind of answers all the questions going along with your training. I was really proud of what I was able to make, and people have been really enjoying it and seeing results. So it's been a fun kind of journey to actually give people something that for years they've been asking me for, but I hadn't known how to answer that.
I love it, because yes, it's exactly that. You nailed like the things that we say in our heads, and yes, being able to kind of get out of that. And you guys have partially gone through it, but I'm going to actually use it prior to Chicago, I think, and try to go through every single module, kind of like you said, build it directly to a race. Mm-hmm. And so I'm really excited to use each of the pieces, instead of like right now I didn't have a race. So it was like, I'm looking at it, but I'm not as focused.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for someone right now who is at that point where they're like, I know my mental self-talk is part of what's holding me back, what's like one initial tip you would give them?
I think initially, as much as it's not going to be what people want to hear, and I can give you one that people want to hear, or an area of that afterwards, it has to be that if your life is kind of a mess, if the way that you view yourself is a mess, those negative thoughts are going to come get you in the race, because in a race, that's when we're vulnerable. That's when our innermost nasty thoughts come out. So if you are dealing with a lot, you're struggling through things, and you think that this is the time when running is going to be your big focus, and it's not, because you have so many other things going on in your life. Maybe you have a family member who you're having to look after because they're transitioning into a care home, or you have a 6-month-old child. That's not really going to be the right time for you to be in a mental time frame. So you have to kind of your life has to allow for it. And I think that's something that's underestimated, because yes, running can be great for therapy and kind of helping you to process thoughts. But if you don't believe in yourself and what you're doing and you're able to give it that mental energy, unfortunately, and in most cases, it's not going to happen. You have to kind of have a life that is going to be a situation for that. And you also have to kind of believe in yourself and what you are capable of. If you don't believe in yourself as a person, it's just not going to happen. But I can give you another one that actually people want to hear, because I know that's the answer that people like.
Yeah, I love that one, because it's often what I feel like when people are telling me they want to run a marathon, and I'm sort of saying like, that's amazing. Is this the right time to run a marathon? Yeah. So yes, I think all of that plays in, looking at your whole life. Okay, but what's the tip that they're going to be more like, okay.
Okay, well, the one that kind of, we've all heard of mantras. We've heard of things like distraction. And I actually have 12 different versions of distraction. There's a little worksheet that people can try who do take the course. But I think the biggest one I would say is positive self-talk. Particularly with women, we tend to be very negative towards ourselves. Like I said, we say, I'm useless, I'm slow, I'm not fast enough, even if like I said, everything is kind of in order in the rest of your life. But if you can learn to talk to yourself the way you would talk to a best friend or a sister, or if you imagine you had a 17-year-old daughter who just was in this race, or they were in this situation right now, maybe they did a workout and it didn't go well, they didn't hit any of their paces. If that person came back to you and said like, I'm so slow, I can't do this, I might as well not even bother, like I'm just the worst, would you say to them, yeah, that was terrible, you are absolutely useless, you might as well quit now? No, you would say to them, hey, you got up off your butt on a Sunday morning to run for 2 hours when you could have just sat and watched Netflix, and you tried your best, and yeah, you didn't do what you wanted, but it was also 20-mile-per-hour winds and raining, and you did it. Be proud of yourself for that. Like, if we can learn to talk to ourselves in that way, the power it has is amazing. And I encourage you, like people watching, to try it. When you are out on your run and you are saying those mean things to yourself, try just talking to yourself back, and don't do it in a I language, do it in a you. Like for me, I would be like, come on, Tina, like you're doing great, I know this is tough, but you can fight through this. Or if it really feels weird for you doing it for yourself, imagine a loved one's voice. Imagine your sister's voice. For me, I used to imagine my husband's voice. What would he be saying? He'd be like, come on, babe, you got this. So positive self-talk is a massive one, and it can apply to every area of your life, in which many mental concepts in this course and in life do. But that one is just a really big one, that if you can shift yourself from talking to yourself in the way that you only talk to yourself, you would never talk to anyone else, to how you talk to loved ones, you will be amazed at the difference.
Oh, I love that. Have you heard of the Louise Hay technique, where she talks about looking into a mirror so that you're actually looking into your own eyes and saying things like, I love you, I accept you, like to actually like look at yourself.
That's hard to do.
Yes. So it's super hard. And like that idea of getting yourself to shift into that mindset is huge. I love that. I love that. Okay. So I'm not going to keep you super long, but one more.
Okay.
When folks, because I am seeing this more and more, they'll be looking at their training plan. And so a couple of days before a long run or before a speed workout, they start freaking out about it well in advance, which is easy, especially like I'm just thinking about marathon training for Chicago and already like, whew, that's months away. So when they're starting to freak out about like the next workout, what's a tip?
Okay. Well, and that is definitely something I address, because nerves are part of it. And let me just say, we all feel that way. Like you may look at elite runners, you may look at other runners that are experienced. Everyone gets nervous before workouts, because it does feel like a test. I mean, even if it is just you out there No one is with you except for your watch. If your coach has set you a time, you feel like you have to, you don't want to let them down. Or if you're doing it for yourself, you're just kind of following your own plan. You don't want to let yourself down, but it all comes down to pressure. If you are getting nervous more than maybe a few hours before, you are putting too much on this race. You are kind of getting yourself to a point where this means more to you than it actually should mean. You've got to remember that over the course of a marathon build-up, it's maybe 12 weeks, maybe 16 weeks, maybe 20 weeks. And during that time, there's no way you are going to have a perfect streak. And if you are, you've at a pretty high likelihood that something major is going to go wrong in the race. But everyone has setbacks. Everyone will have weeks where they don't have a great race, a great workout. But if that happens, you've still got, let's say, 25 other days that turned out great. And the more you can remove that pressure and remind yourself, okay, this is just 1/25th of the important things I have to do for this training. Remind yourself it's the accumulation, not the specific days. And again, remind yourself that the biggest thing about workouts is that you are doing the best that you can on that day. Like, your workout is not going to show, like I said, the wind or the rain or the fact that you didn't sleep last night because your child was vomiting all night, or that you have a massive work project due and you are spending 18 hours of your day working, or you had 20 different things you had to do that day, and so you're drained from yesterday. Like, the workout doesn't show all those things. So all you can do is the best that you can do. And if that's slower than it's supposed to be, that's okay. Like, it's not like so much we think we've got to get to the speed that we need to get to be fit, but it's not. A lot of it is about you're mentally pushing through by working through this tough situation, whatever you're in, but your body is still working the same effort, the same intensity that needs to be doing. So be proud of that. Just the more you can take the pressure off and just say, you know what, it is just a workout, and just one workout. It doesn't define me. It doesn't say who I am. It's just one day, and I'm going to do the best I can.
Ah, yes. And that's a lot of why we've talked in here, you guys, about why we often prescribe effort-based workouts. So we want you to run hard or moderate or easy. And it's getting used to that idea that hard on one day is different than hard on another day. And you have to learn to kind of trust yourself. And I think elite runners have more experience doing that. And that's part of why then they're able to do very pace specific drill downs, because they've learned to trust and hear their body. And so that's a lot of the times what we're trying to make you guys do. So when we don't always give paces, I think that's a great example of why. And then even going into those workouts, something that I have to practice too is like, just do that first rep. Like, then do the second rep, or just do that first mile, then do the second mile. Like, maybe it will be a day where you were supposed to do 10 and you get through 5 and that's all you can do, but you got through 5 instead of freaking yourself out and doing none of them.
Yep. And even just that, like, you may see that as a failure. Well, I only managed 5. That's not enough training. Again, go back to the fact that this is just one day. It's not everything. The whole thing about training is it's the accumulation. It's the building year after year, week after week, month after month.
Yes, absolutely. So I definitely want to make sure you guys are, one, listening to her podcast. So I'm going to make sure there's a link there if for some reason you're not. But also I want you guys to look more at this mental training, because I think it's just so key. Like I've said, it's the piece of your training plan that like isn't real easy to write in. And so we try to talk about these things, but I love that you have a very set, like helpful progression for people to kind of go through. So we're going to make sure there's a link for that too.
And I just want to say with that, well, one thing that these are things you will apply to the rest of your life. You will see them kind of spread out. But secondly, I do want to give $50 off to your listeners, your followers. If they want to use code Amanda, that will get you $50 off. So
Cool. We'll make sure I write that down in the notes.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. All right, you guys. So I'm sure you will end up having questions later, and I will try to answer them then, but hopefully this was super helpful. I thought these were fantastic tips to kind of just get you guys thinking about your runs a little bit differently and recognizing how important your thoughts are to having great training and a great race. So thank you so much, Tina.
Thank you. No, I appreciate this.
All right, gang, we will talk later.